Now, Manchester United failed to get 3 points against Arsenal, but I'm telling you guys, there are some positive factors for you guys to buy into with Ruben Amorim's football. And as the season continues, I think we will only see the completeness continue as well in the squad. But also with saying that, there are some deficiencies in the team. I think the manner in which Manchester United conceded a goal is Exhibit 1. We're going to go through a tactical breakdown of exactly what happened across those 90 minutes, what Manchester United did, how Arsenal tried their best to try and counter what Manchester United were doing, and most importantly, how Arsenal managed to walk away with 3 points. Because yes, they only got 1 goal, but they really created nothing out of that. And Manchester United, I think, was on top throughout most of the game. So be sure to hit the like button, be sure to subscribe as well if you are new here. Like I say all the time, if you enjoy these tactical breakdowns, let me know in the comment section and I'll continue to do it as the season progresses. Now let's get into it. Now let's start with one thing that I noticed that you see here is 2 minutes into the game. Immediately I noticed it, and Manchester United were doing it quite a few times throughout the game. Ruben Amorim spoke about it as well. Shout out to Carl Anker from The Athletic, who asked a question about why he inverts his central centre-back in build-up. And the reason why I have questions about this, and I'm going to show you guys an example on the tactical board as well, the reason why I have questions about it is just because I don't think Manchester United's central centre-backs can really do the job that well. In this position here, you see Altay Bayindir 2 minutes into the game with his foot on the ball. You see De Ligt linking up with Casemiro to make a 2-man midfield, and then in the wide shots you can't see it, but Luke Shaw's on one side and then Leny Yoro is on the other side. And in this instance, Altay Bayindir goes short to Leny Yoro, and it happened a lot throughout the game. A lot of the time Leny Yoro was the outlet option to Altay Bayindir because De Ligt was inverting centrally. Now when the central centre-back inverts centrally and he's not naturally a comfortable ball progressor, I just feel like it's a very awkward and uncomfortable position for the central centre-back to be in with his back to the opponent. I mean, now Leny Yoro tends to be the outlet option throughout the 90 minutes for Altay Bayindir, and here it's no different. He goes short to him, and you see just De Ligt picking up that space just behind Odegaard, and then you see Casemiro in quite a bit of space as well. Manchester United, quite naturally, even in possession in these situations here, are creating diamond shapes across the pitch, and I'm going to show you guys that on the tactical board, but you can also see it here in the middle of the pitch. There is a 4-man diamond shape. Now, one question that I have and why Ruben Amorim does this, the central centre-back in De Ligt is not a natural, comfortable player back to the opponent. So in this instance, I felt like throughout the game he looked uncomfortable. He was never really the outlet option. Why? Because a lot of the time, and I stopped counting after like the 5th time, Manchester United just went long. And I get Manchester United going long because then it's all about winning the second ball. And at some instances, they were able to do that. A lot of the time, Arsenal would win the first ball with their tall, towering centre-backs. But Manchester United, with the physicality of Mbeumo, with the physicality of Cunha, with Mason Mount being able to put a foot in, would win the second ball and be able to retain possession further up the pitch. It was a gamble that paid off. Manchester United building up from the back is not a pretty sight. And if Man United do continue like this, then they need to get a goalkeeper that can play better. They need to have a central centre-back that can also be the outlet option in the middle. Leny Yoro and Luke Shaw for me were perfect for executing what Ruben Amorim wanted to do because they're so good at progressing the ball. Quite a few times we saw Leny Yoro be able to kind of drive on that right-hand side with Dalot a lot further, or Dalot sometimes inverting central. And Leny Yoro, we know he's good on the ball, as is Luke Shaw. So in this particular instance today in the game, it paid off. But it's not something that's always going to pay off, because sometimes it might feel like you're making your inverted you're making your central centre back invert, and as a result you might be playing with one less player in build up just because your central centre back player has nothing to offer out of possession. Now this is an example for me of just small marginal differences that could change the game for Manchester United. Now in this instance, Bruno Fernandes a couple of seconds before this plays a great outlet pass, and I'm going to show you guys on the tactical board exactly how it went down, because what happened was Calafiori and even Ben White on the right hand side, they were playing so far forward, so Man United in transition were able to capitalize on that, and in this particular instance they do that. Now I know you lot are probably thinking, what happens here and what went wrong? Now, Bryan Mbeumo is 1v1 against Gabriel. He's got Saliba watching Cunha, and then you've got 3 Arsenal players trying to track back. So in this particular instance, it's a 2v2. It's about to turn into a 5v2. And I just think for me, Cunha makes the wrong decision, because you would think with all that space on the left-handed side over there that he could run into, he should run into there, which would actually open up the gap as Bryan Mbeumo is about to come onto his left foot to maybe take the shot or play a pass in behind. But Cunha doesn't actually do that. Cunha runs across goal. He runs across goal, which then brings Saliba. Now it turns into a 2v2, but more so, one of the defenders is blocking the shooting path of Mbumo, and then it's just a scuff chance with not much power behind it. But again, for me, this is why I'm mentioning it, because it's just small marginal differences like this that can make a difference for Manchester United if the decision was different from Cunha. Now, on the topic of Matheus Cunha, for me, he was Manchester United's one of the Man United's standout players, and it's because he does stuff like this, something that Manchester United have not had in the midfield for God knows how long. He picks up the ball in the middle third. He's got, you can see here, 4 players around him, and then he's got one option to him. Now he takes 1 or 2 touches to kind of get himself a degree of separation away from the defenders, and then he finds himself in a damning situation. He finds himself 3 guys running in line with him, and then him running onto 2 defenders. And this is what Cunha thrives in. These are the situations that I think that Man United will benefit from having a player like Cunha, because like I said, United haven't had a player like this for a long time in the middle of the pitch. Now imagine just Sesko in that front line when Cunha picks up that ball. He's ready to stretch the back line. Your striker's ready to stretch the back line, and that also will give the centre back something to be occupied with. Now in this particular instance, he does something very well. He is not as big as Mbumo in terms of physical attribute, but he maybe is as strong, maybe even stronger than Mbumo, because he's able to shield the ball and use his body very well to just drive through the middle and get straight through the defensive situation. And this is exactly what he does. He drives through, gets a little lucky bounce, I would say, off his foot, but he does not stop. He persists, he persists, he persists. In this instance, Saliba runs across goal. He gets the shot off, but it's a very scuffed shot, and it's because Saliba's recovery pace, I think, is very good. But these are the difference makers in the game. Now, if Man United are able to be more clinical, I guarantee you the goals will come, and I think that's what Man United were able to do against Arsenal very well. Now, this situation here is something that I'm worried about, and it's something that happened quite a bit throughout the game. It's Man United's exposure in the midfield position. Now, at times there was throughout the game, especially in these kind of situations, and even in build-up situations where I saw Casemiro as the lone midfielder. It's not any different than Erik ten Hag's 3-1-6 that we moaned about a couple of seasons ago. But in this particular situation here, Arsenal are in possession. When Arsenal are in possession, they're just ticking the ball around, trying to get the opening, and it's quite comfortable. Why? Because they've got 3 players in quite close proximity in Manchester United players, and a heap of space in the middle of the pitch to get through to. Now, as soon as one pass goes into that midfield, the entire midfield central area has opened up for them, and the next opportunity is for them to run at Manchester United and at Manchester United's backline, because the coverage in front of the backline is just not there. And I saw it quite a few times during the game, and that's why I can't stop talking about the need for Manchester United to sign a midfielder, because it is so important. Let's go into the best part. The tactical board has to come out. You see here Manchester United starting 11 versus Arsenal's, and one thing that Man United were able to do, and I'm not gonna lie, coming into the game I did kind of anticipate that Manchester United would have to find themselves in a battle in the midfield, but I feel like Manchester United were able to comfortably dominate possession. And one thing that they did quite well in the deeper zones is utilize the space that Arsenal were vacating, and I think is mainly because Arsenal's fullbacks were playing very high. Now, in quite a few particular situations, you had Martinelli at Lenny Yoro coming a bit more central, and then you had Calafiori inverting in this area here. Now, if you saw my tactical breakdown before the game, I did say that Miles Lewis-Skelly, or whoever the left back was for Arsenal, would invert quite a lot, and we saw that quite often. Calafiori picking up these spaces here, Diogo Dalot having to drop in. But what does that mean? That meant that Manchester United were able to use this entire space on the right hand side, and somebody like Mbumo did exactly that. He was able to come into those areas on the right hand side, and that's why I actually mentioned in my reaction video after the game that I felt like the first 45 minutes of Mbumo and Dalot playing together was definitely better than what I've seen in pre-season between Mbumo and Ahmad, mainly because Mbumo and Ahmad, for me, they play very similar, especially in the attacking phases. In the final third phases, they play very similar. They want to come off of the right hand side onto their left foot, find a delivery into the box, find a shot off, find the right pass, etc. But one thing Man United were able to do was to utilize the space that was being vacated by the fullbacks. And it's not just on that side, it was also on this other side. Patrick Dorgu, I think Bukayo Saka's lack of threat throughout the game allowed Patrick Dorgu to pin down White a lot more. And as a result, you know, the battle between these two here resulted in someone like Mason Mount being able to utilize those spaces, and someone like Saliba finding himself having to cover these spaces here, and same with Gabriel finding himself having to cover here, which Zubimendi, I don't know if some of you guys realize, Zubimendi was dropping into that little area in front of the centre backs quite often, because these particular players here found themselves, Saliba and Gabriel found themselves having to come out into the wide channels to defend quite a lot. And that is mainly for me because somebody like Calafiori was inverting quite often here. Someone like Saka was trying to be pinned up against Luke Shaw, but I think his involvement in the game was very minimal, as was Martinelli. Two attackers or three attackers, even Gyökeres, who let Arsenal down over the game. I think throughout the game, a lot of Arsenal's build-up was going through Odegaard. But one thing about Arsenal is they get into that final area, that final third of Manchester United, and the pass is just not on for Odegaard, whether it's to the left, whether it's to the right, whether it's for Gyökeres. We found quite a few times Gyökeres finding himself in this wide channel here and putting a delivery into the box and not always finding the right option. You'd see Martinelli come back post, and as a result, Diogo Dalot would be playing a lot deeper, as would Lenny Yoro. And you'd see Declan Rice come in here and Saka come into that area in front of the centre backs or the inside 10, if you want to call it that. And Gyökeres trying to put those deliveries into the box, just over hitting it a lot of the time, under hitting it. But I thought it was more so over hitting it. And I think Man United did their defensive due diligence very well. I think except for the set piece that Manchester United conceded, I think defensively De Ligt was solid. I think Lenny Yoro was solid. I think Luke Shaw did a very, very good job. And I think one thing that Man United did very well was creating those chances in transition against Arsenal, which as a result, a lot of the time you would find three players of Arsenal running back to try and cover, because like I said, the fullbacks were quite high, and that, you know, some people might say that's an error, and some people might have thought that was a mistake on Mikel Arteta's side. But one thing that I liked from Manchester United's front line, and that's before actually Benjamin Sesko came on, I liked what I saw out of possession, number one, because one thing that Manchester United like to do under Ruben Amorim, and I think this is also another reason why he went for Dalot to start over Ahmad, was Manchester United shifting into a back four out of possession, and that would allow someone like Dalot to drop into right back, Patrick Dorgu to stay here as a left winger, Bruno Fernandes would be here. I saw Cunha dropping into these areas over here, and Mount and Mbeumo playing as the front two. And Manchester United, I think, played with a less kind of aggressive press, where they just covered their zonal areas that they were in. Mount was covering the areas here, and Mbeumo was covering here, Cunha here, Casemiro here, Bruno Fernandes here, Patrick Dorgu here. You kind of get my point. They were covering less, rather than going man to man, they were just covering the areas, and that actually left, I think, Gyökeres quite isolated, and Arsenal didn't really find the solution to get Gyökeres involved in the game. I think he had about 21 touches in the game. I think he played 7 or 8 passes, no shots on goal, and a lot of the things that Arsenal were trying to do, especially when Manchester United were playing with more so their back three, was those balls over the top to Gyökeres to put him in an aerial duel with De Ligt, and a lot of the time De Ligt was coming out on top. And the same with Yoro. I don't know if you actually noticed, I think it was the first kick from Arsenal, the first long ball from Arsenal in the first half, targeted Gyökeres against Lenny Yoro, and Lenny Yoro showed him straight away that he wasn't someone to play with. And I just think Gyökeres was isolated throughout the game. You know, the runs that you would normally see him make, and the runs that he did make into those wide kind of channels, if he did, he would get into those areas, and once he gets into those areas, there wouldn't really be anybody in the box for him once he tries to play that delivery in. And I just think Manchester United defended very well out of possession. Now, I was very impressed with what I saw from this guy here. Mason Mount, what he had to offer both in and out of possession was perfect. I felt like Manchester United were quite right-sided heavy throughout the game. And what I mean by that is when they were attacking, Manchester United would have the ball on the left-hand side, and they would try and get Arsenal to kind of shift to the right, whether it's Zubimendi coming here, Saliba shifting, everybody shifting out here, you know, You would have Dalot against Calafiori and get Mbeumo to exploit that space. But one thing Mason Mount, for me, did very well when that ball would come over here or the ball would come centrally is Mason Mount would drop into these spaces here. You'd have Bruno Fernandes having that free roll in the deeper area. It's like a quarterback, essentially, for me. And you'd have Mount trying his best to get Patrick Dorgu with that isolated performance against Ben White. And one thing we know about Patrick Dorgu is that he can pin his centre back, but most importantly, he can use those channels on the left side to kind of play like a winger. And a lot of opportunities opened up for him. I think one chance that he actually got on goal was from him making a run from that left side and getting a shot off. And like I said earlier, a lot of the time, the likes of Saliba and Gabriel had to cover for their fullbacks because of that. Do I think Mikel Arteta got that tactic wrong? I do, to an extent. I think, making your fullbacks kind of play so advanced, and, Manchester United now having with this pace, with Mbeumo, with Cunha, they got Dorgu, they got Mason Mount that can drop into all these elements of areas, which I felt like, again, he was a key part to Manchester United trying their best to play in that transition way and exploit the space that Arsenal were giving up. And Arsenal were giving up quite a lot of space. I don't know if you lot realise, but there was a lot of times where Arsenal would find themselves having, three guys running back because Manchester United are in transition. And that is the only thing for Manchester United, I think, is to just be more clinical. You can create 20 chances in front of goal, but when none of those are big chances, then you know where the problem is. The problem for me, the biggest problem for me, for Manchester United, is the way that Dalot and Mbeumo or Patrick Dorgu and Mount were able to link up on that wide side. When that ball would come in, there would be no one in the box. I mean, Manchester United were able to, utilize this Calafiori versus Mbeumo situation where it's a 2v1. And as a result, Manchester United would get Dalot isolated in the far channels with the kind of overlap. And once he comes there with the ball, he looks up and puts a delivery in, but there's no one in the box. And that same thing happened as well from this side with Dorgu, a delivery across the box, nothing to offer Manchester United because there's no one in the box. Now, in the final parts of the game, Arsenal found themselves defending for their lives to an extent that, yeah, guys, they were playing with a back five. And that actually worked, in my opinion, in Manchester United's favour, because if I just highlight Amad Diallo here, who was playing in that wide area a lot, I mentioned him earlier as well in the video about him and Mbeumo. I think him and Mbeumo played a lot better in comparison to what we saw in pre-season. But one thing that helped Manchester United, in my opinion, was Amad Diallo going 1v1 against Madueke. Madueke was on toast. Every single moment, Amad was able to get past him and skip past him, put a delivery into the box, or try find that pass to Mbeumo or Cunha, or, try find an aerial opportunity for Sesko. And, Arsenal were defending for their lives, and in the last 10 minutes, throughout most of the game, it was all Manchester United. But equally, with saying that, I think Ugarte had some situations for me that I just can't overlook. The shot from about this range here, when with Manchester United's having space open up through the middle where you can recycle possession, and he thought the right idea was to go for goal. For me, that was just a poor opportunity. But one thing that Man United didn't capitalise a lot on, in my opinion, was that back five or makeshift back five that Arsenal went into, especially in the last 5 or 10 minutes, and having that isolating moment for Amad versus Madueke, because Lewis Skelly was kind of tucking in and Gabriel was trying to pick up Mbeumo and Saliba was trying to pick up Sesko. As a result, Timber was coming in a lot more centrally and Patrick Dorgu was playing out wide. I don't think Manchester United capitalised on that enough. Let me know your thoughts of the game. Did you guys feel like at any point Manchester United would go up? Because I felt like throughout most of the game that it was actually quite unfortunate for United to be down. And I'm not even saying that as a United fan. I just felt like United were the better team. But one thing about football, it's not always the better team that comes out with 3 points. Now, after this, I think it's confirmed to me, Man United need a midfielder, Man United need a goalkeeper. That is the two most obvious situations. Are they going to get that We don't know, but we have to wait and see as the season progresses. But I definitely think there's some elements of football for us to bite into. I think once the attack clicks, once that final third football clicks, we will see some free-flowing football, hopefully, for Manchester United. Mbumo, Cunha, Ahmad, all of those guys will be involved with a lot of goals for Manchester United. If you enjoy these tactical videos, guys, please let me know down below and I'll continue to do that. Be sure to hit the like button and be sure to subscribe as well if you are new here.